All right, Billy. Thanks for hopping on here with me. It's just before 2:30 p.m. on Friday here, March 14th. Just going to give a couple of quick updates to some of the long-term things we've been talking about. The Quakes have come back with a roar to the West Coast, haven't they?
Yeah.
Even starting, it started south, near Central America. Just as the springtime came. And what makes this a long-term thing we're watching is we noticed a couple of months ago that the earthquakes had pretty much stopped happening at the west coast of the Americas, comparatively with the Western Pacific Ring of Fire. And we had noticed a couple of times on both the East and West Ring of Fires that we've seen some bigger earthquakes when tropical storms or tropical cyclones are nearby or overhead or have just gone past. And so we were thinking, all right, well, it'd be interesting to see if, maybe there's an earthquake season to this, seeing if maybe the earthquakes would return around March or so. And this is something that we've talked about a couple of different times in Fly on the Wall.
Mm-hmm.
And now it started with that 6.5 off the coast of Nicaragua. We had a 5-pointer off the coast of San Diego, which when you get up to the coast of the United States, 5-pointers are rare. We had the big one off the coast of California. Luckily, it was far enough off the coast that there was no major damage. But we had another 5-pointer off the coast of Oregon today. And at this point, there's no real way to tell whether or not it's simply an aftershock to the California event from a few days ago, the larger 6-pointer, or whether or not it's a foreshock of what's to come. But what's interesting is we're right here in March. This was the time that we were beginning to talk about when the seasons begin to change in the north. We were looking for a roar back to the earthquakes in this part of the world, which is interesting. And, another thing that made us look at this was it seems like New Zealand has been having more quakes than normal. And they've been having the tropical storm watches pretty much nonstop. It hasn't been anywhere else for weeks. When it was a little bit more north, towards the equator of the Western Pacific, that's when we were seeing a lot in the Philippines and areas like that, where we just saw tropical cyclone after cyclone, or perhaps those are typhoons over there in that part of the world, excuse me, typhoon after typhoon coming across the area. Well, it's not that time of season anymore, and we haven't seen a bigger one in the Philippines in quite a few weeks, months, I'd even say. So that's just a quick little, a little over 3 minutes there, updating on the earthquake situation. Now, speaking of weather changing in the north, speaking for myself only in Columbus, Ohio, about 4 or 5 days ago, it was 60 degrees. I was outside in a t-shirt. And then yesterday morning, I woke up to a high temperature of 9 degrees Fahrenheit. Very, very cold. And today, the wind is blasting out of the south. And it's already up into the 50s, and I think we're supposed to hit 60 again today. Now, this isn't, this whole hotter, colder isn't necessarily anything new. I mean, people know we have cold fronts come through and warm fronts come through. But if it seems to anyone else as though the shifts between warm and cold are happening not only really fast, but to an extreme extent, this is what we talk about when we say climate extremes. The high pressure systems are higher, the low pressure systems are lower, and they create these greater exchanges and greater convergences of opposing air masses. And when I say opposing, they have differing electric potential, differing temperatures, different moisture contents, and they get slammed together at these convergence lines. And they've all got to work out their differences and equalize everything in a very short space and amount of time. And the energy release of that happening is often what causes that severe weather. And the extra drive pushing them together harder is what drives these systems to be so warm one time and then so cold just the very next day. Sorry, I kind of cut you off there, Billy. Go ahead.
No, we had that same scenario building up for the weekend there. Tornado warnings for this weekend
absolutely.
because of that factor.
Yeah. In addition,
Again, our weather's doing the same thing here, roughly, pretty much. We were forecast to be in the upper 60s today, but they changed that early this morning to 70, low 70s. It's quite nice, really, outside today here.
yeah.
Actually, it's picture perfect weather. I can't complain.
Yeah. Temperature-wise, it's beautiful. I'm glad you mentioned the severe weather because I did want to mention that as well. There's going to be some parts of the world that have it rough tomorrow. There's no real tornado threats tonight, but let me just go ahead and take a look here to see if anything has changed. I do like to use a couple of different tools to track this stuff, in addition to looking at where the highs and lows are. And if you know the weather, that's really is pretty much all you need to do. However, looking at where the lows are going to be tomorrow, looking at how hot it is around Mexico and the Gulf and up into Texas, and of course leaning on things like Torcon and NOAA. NOAA is a great resource. There's a major tornado threat, the first one of the year, for Texas, parts of Texas. I'm actually on Torcon right now, which is at weather.com. If you guys don't use that resource, it's a really good one. They've got their highest Torcon tomorrow near Waco, 3 for the central and eastern parts of Texas, and a minor watch for southern Oklahoma, parts of Arkansas and Louisiana. But so here we are. It is that time of year where we got to start watching out for the tornado watches and things like that. We're going to see these shifts between hot and cold really severely here in the spring, and hopefully the return of earthquakes to this part of the world isn't too bad. Last but not least, got to do a little update on the mobile observatory. I am absolutely flabbergasted and floored at the response to this. This has, like I said, at this point it's a little after 2:30 p.m. here on Friday, so we're a good 5 hours short of being completed with one day of this, and we're already more than a quarter of the way there, more than 25% of the way home. I am so humbled by this right now. I could usually just kind of talk all day, regardless of the topic, but I am pretty much at a loss for words right now with the generosity that people are showing. And this isn't the kind of thing where people are just like, oh, I'll just toss this out here. There's an element to this where I would like to at least believe that people believe in the idea and they believe in the record that we've put forth. It's not easy to not take a weekend, to not take a holiday for years. But when you have a very supportive wife and you really just love keeping an eye on the planet and the sun and you love putting the news together, it really does make it easier. But my long-term hopes that dedication would be recognized in the sense that you guys recognize I can pull this off too. I'm going to make this happen, and I'm going to keep the news going, obviously, as well, and the website premium content. Both of those are going to get better through this. Anyway, I'll put the link here if anybody hasn't seen the Kickstarter campaign yet. This is very, very cool. I sound a bit like a kid, but I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, that humble attitude you have is going to carry you a lot further than you realize.
Yeah, well.
And that go-getter attitude on top of that.
I got to tell you, the most fun part of this is going to be seeing everybody. I'm a really old school guy. I like the handshake, and there's a lot of people's hands I want to shake out there on the road. And I know just from people who have sent me emails too, like they can't wait to shake my hand, and I can't wait till we start really getting into making the tour schedule. Last thing I want to mention on this is a question that keeps coming up time and time again. I actually created there's one frequently asked question I put up on the project page. People keep asking, all right, well, hey, how do you know what name I want on here? The name I've got on Kickstarter isn't the name I want on the bus, or I want to, I want to have my company name on there, or my website, or I want to have, a relative of mine, or I want to have it dedicated to my kid or something like that. Kickstarter has a system. They apparently have dealt with this before. And if we are successful, and remember, if the goal is 35,000, if we get 34,999, if we just fall $1 short, it goes to zero. This is all or nothing. But if we are successful, afterwards, there is a system where everybody who has pledged to the point where they're going to get a reward, after it is successfully funded, you will get an email asking you exactly what you want as your name there. Now, there are going to be a few minor restrictions. They're not going to be anything that's unreasonable. You're going to read the restrictions and say, everything on there makes sense, and I could probably even add one or two. And I just wanted to keep it short. If you come up with something that's outside the restricted list and is asinine, I'll probably ask you to reconsider. But all that is taken care of. I've been getting that question a lot. But other than that, this is very exciting. Don't want to keep this too long here. Billy, I'll see you for the full fly on the wall tomorrow morning, along with everybody else. Appreciate you getting on here with me, and thanks to everyone who supported us so far and everybody else who's going to support us. This truly means the world to us. Be safe, everyone.